program from the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, is now at your doorstep.
By the way, what is corporate governance and what are its key pillars?
Will there be any conflict of interest if our person combines the roles of our chairman and our chief executive officer in a corporate organization?
What can Nigeria do to gain international recognition in the context of the application of corporate governance?
These and many more questions will be answered on
Corporate Governance Platform, a program designed to inform and educate our numerous viewers on the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities.
Join the Corporate Governance Platform crew every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. on MITV, your talent station, via DSTV 255 and UHF 43.
Corporate Governance Platform, your strategy for the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities. Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.
Many thanks for joining us on Corporate Governance Platform, proudly brought to you by the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria. I am your anchorman, Tunde Odeyemi. Today we are going to take a look at the functions of meetings and dialogues as tools of shareholders' relationship management. And I have with me in the studio my guest, Mrs. AJIBIKE OSHODI, FCIS. Mrs. AJIBIKE OSHODI qualified as a lawyer from the Nigerian Law School in 1990. Her education was done primarily in the United Kingdom, and she has a Master's of International Business Law with distinction from the University of Manchester in United Kingdom. AJIBIKE OSHODI has been the pioneer legal secretary of two Lagos State parastatals, Lagos State Metropolitan Area Transport Authority and Lagos State Pension Commission. She is an active member of the Employee Relations and Labour Committees of the Nigerian Bar Association, Lagos Island Branch. She has also been active in the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria and has served in the Corporate Governance, Publicity and Nominations Committees of the Institute. Mrs. OSHODI has particular interest in corporate governance, women's issues, reading, traveling, and cooking. Presently, she runs her own law firm, Queen and Young Legal Practitioners. Mrs. AJIBIKE OSHODI, you are welcome to Corporate Governance Platform.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for finding time to join us to come and share your thoughts on this program.
Okay.
You know, today we are going to be discussing the functions of meetings and dialogues as tools of shareholders' relationship management. And I would like to start by asking you, what really is the shareholders' engagement?
Okay. As we know, a shareholder is actually an investor in the company. Once you have one share, you're a shareholder in a company.
Okay.
So shareholder engagement is the process by which there's regular dialogue between the shareholder and the company. The shareholder will communicate his needs, his interests, and his expectations, and try to align that such with the objectives of the company.
Wow, wow. Does it mean that the company can hold meetings with all the shareholders?
They're statutory. There's some times where the company has to hold like an AGM.
Okay.
I'm sure you're very familiar with the concept of AGM. Annual general meeting must be held annually,
yeah,
particularly for the public limited companies.
Okay. Okay then, what's the purpose of shareholders' engagement in the context of corporate governance?
As I just said, a shareholder is an investor in the company. It could be like a regular shareholder or an institutional shareholder.
Okay.
When you have a company, they hold a lot of people's money together. So the purpose of shareholder engagement is actually to put the management as well as the board in check.
Okay.
So that's why we have the annual general meeting every year.
And that is
where the shareholder can talk.
Okay, and that is why it is relevant in corporate governance.
Yes, that is why it's relevant.
Okay.
It's very essential.
Now, in what ways can effective shareholders engagement drive corporate objectives?
We've had cases where shareholders engagement, if it's very volatile and if they're following the affairs of the company, they can actually let the company switch direction.
Okay.
Especially in climes where shareholder engagement is very prominent. It's not so prominent in Nigeria as at now.
Okay, shareholders engagement is not so prominent in Nigeria.
No, we're not as vocal. Shareholders in Nigeria, we don't find they're as vocal as those in, let's say, America or other countries.
Okay, I want to ask to the extent of which shareholders engagement is relevant by asking, will you say that the practice of shareholders engagement has reached the desired level in corporate Nigeria? And if it has not, to what extent has it gone?
Well, if we have like 100% shareholder engagement, perhaps in Nigeria we've reached a level of, let's say, 40-50.
Wow.
But then if you think about it, Nigeria as a whole, we're not used to being vocal about our rights. So most people in Nigeria will just buy shares and just keep them and sell or buy more as it is. They won't really think of going to the company website and engaging with the company.
Okay, most of the time we buy the shares, we keep them, sell, or probably wait for when dividends will be declared.
Yes.
The aspect of the shareholders engagement, we are not really doing much of that.
No, we're not doing as much as we should.
Okay. Now, let's look at the Code of Corporate Governance, the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2018. The code provides that the board should develop a policy that ensures appropriate engagement with the shareholders and that the policy should be posted on the website of the company. Why is this requirement of hosting the policy on the company's website necessary?
If you think back to, I think, March 2020, when all this COVID-19 started,
Okay.
most of us turned to the internet for information.
Sure.
So I think maybe the code was actually thinking ahead. Because if you look at a website, it's permanent and you can always go to it, review it, and see what is going on with the company. But I must mention that the code is actually, it's not mandatory.
Okay.
It's just a code, so you might follow it and you might not follow it.
Okay. But despite the fact that companies are required to have shareholders engagement policy in their company and host it on their website, are companies really doing it in Nigeria from your own perspective?
As I said, I'm a shareholder in some companies, and to be honest, I've never actually gone to look at the website.
Wonderful.
So as much as we engage with the company, that would actually force them to do this. So I can't really say. But knowing Nigeria, and also you're meant to update it, there's something the code said that you must have 5 years of annual reports there.
Okay.
If you really go through the annual reports, you'll be able to see how the company is doing or not. I'm not sure whether many companies actually do it. And as I said, our engagement too is a bit lacking.
Can you think of any reason behind this low shareholders engagement, especially in our client?
Well, if you think about it, Nigerians are not really used to speaking up. We've had several years of military rule.
Wow.
And even the democracy, well, some would say, is it actually a democracy? So we're not really used to engaging with institutions.
Okay.
So I think it's the cultural thing. Maybe as time goes on, as we see that once we engage, things get better, you have more of engagement.
Okay, as things get better, maybe you have more of engagement. I'd like to talk about a particular regulatory restriction. Now, by asking, do you think that the recent regulatory prohibition on pre-annual general meetings with shareholders is contrary to the principle of shareholders engagement?
What happened was, I think SEC put out a regulation that they should not have an AGM before an AGM.
Sure.
Because they found at the AGM, you have very important resolutions being passed, i.e., should we appoint this director, how much should we borrow, things that were very crucial. And under the Nigerian climb, it was actually found out that some companies were actually doing an AGM before the AGM, i.e., they would get a group of maybe volatile shareholders or people that they knew could influence things, and they would talk to them before the actual AGM. Now that is not actually acceptable, because that negates all the shareholders being together. For instance, if there are 100 and I've taken 10 of the volatile ones and I've spoken to them before the AGM, I've actually sealed my deal before the actual meeting.
Okay.
So they didn't want that. And also the issue of distribution of gifts, I think that was tied to it. They said you are not allowed to give them gifts either at the AGM or before. It's also part of it. So it's a good development.
Okay, don't you think having a pre-AGM before the AGM, right, is a way of doing carrying out shareholders engagement.
No, as I said, if we have shareholder engagement properly on the web, you don't actually need to get people together once and then get them together twice. Remember, we're still going through a pandemic.
Sure.
So perhaps maybe looking ahead, maybe there will be a future where we'll have actually virtual meetings and we'll have explanations before the AGM to all shareholders and everybody can log in.
Wonderful, wonderful. Because I think some of the companies that do this, they do it in a way so that they can engage some of the shareholders before they actually go for the annual general meeting, which to some of them, it's a way of engaging the shareholders.
As I said, the company belongs to all the shareholders. You can't call some
And
leave some out. So you must call everybody. Once they call everybody, maybe that will be seen as being more fair.
But what of the calling shareholders associations, representative of different shareholders associations into those meetings before the real AGM?
To be honest, I'm not so sure that is even being democratic. Because what if I'm a shareholder and I'm not a member of the association?
Wonderful, wonderful. That's a good one. That's a good one. Okay, let's look at this. With these regulatory restrictions, the COVID-19 protocols on social distancing, how do you think that companies can achieve effective shareholders engagement?
I think the code actually says, as I said, that they must have a portal. Also that they must have all their annual reports 5 years back.
Okay.
So maybe on each website, they should have a place where the shareholders can put their comments and actually engage with the company all throughout the year, not just at AGMs. And also they can have information slots on YouTube.
Okay.
You can have it on Instagram. We can have slots even on Facebook, because we know we're all in a digital age. So the idea of calling thousands of people into a room is no longer necessary.
Okay, so it's important to leverage on
social media.
Social media. Okay. Now, the board of a company is required to encourage institutional investors to positively influence the standard of corporate governance. Now, why is the focus on institutional investors, since substantial member of the shareholders of the institutional investors rather do not attend the annual general meeting?
I think it goes back to your question and what I said. It's been very difficult to get all the shareholders all together, because Mr. A may be in Kano, Mr. B might be in Port Harcourt. Okay. Meanwhile, the institutional investor, although he holds a small amount of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, he's easily reachable.
Okay.
And also there are organizations that hold shares in trust on behalf of people. So it goes back to which shareholder in association do I trust? But meanwhile, I can trust institutional investor. But we still have to combat that hurdle, because most investors in Nigeria are not institutional. When I looked at, when I did a bit of research, it seems our institutional investors are just like 15%. I might be wrong. So most of our investors are the retail, Mr. A in Ibadan, Mr. Z in Port Harcourt.
Okay, what makes an institutional investor? Why is it different from the retail investor?
An institutional investor is like a company like ARM,
okay,
or First Bank, their trustee, or in the investment companies. Now we have a lot of pension funds as well that are institutional investors. Okay,
thank you. We'll quickly go on a very short break. When we come back, we'll resume conversation with Mrs. AJIBIKE, right?
AJIBIKE.
Mrs. AJIBIKE OSHODI on shareholders engagement. Please don't go away.
Corporate Governance Platform, a program from the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, is now at your doorstep.
By the way, what is corporate governance and what are its key pillars?
Will there be any conflict of interest if our person combines the roles of our chairman and a chief executive officer in a corporate organization?
What can Nigeria do to gain international recognition in the context of the application of corporate governance?
These and many more questions will be answered on
Corporate Governance Platform, a program designed to inform and educate our numerous viewers on the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities.
Join the Corporate Governance Platform Coup every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. on MITV, your talent station via DSTV 255 and UHF 43.
Corporate Governance Platform, your strategy for the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities.
Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.
You are welcome back. It's the Corporate Governance Platform, proudly brought to you by the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria. And we've been discussing shareholders' engagement, and Mrs. AJIBIKE, OSHODI, right?
Yes.
Has been leading in the discussion. You actually mentioned the difference between the retail shareholders and, of course, the institutional investors. But I'd like to ask this question. In our environment, don't you think that the retail investors who attend annual general meetings are in a better position to influence the standard of corporate governance?
As I explained earlier, the retail investors, I think they're more than the institutional in Nigeria, but they don't tend to be coordinated.
Okay.
So if you have Mr. A in Ibadan, Mr. C in Abeokuta, and Mr. Z in Jos, where would they meet before the annual general meeting to discuss and also to tackle the company? But meanwhile, the institutional investor will have legal advisors, he will have financial experts all under his roof. So it's better to tackle the board and management when it comes to corporate governance.
Because
he has
even though they are not more, they are more coordinated.
They are more coordinated.
Yes. Okay. Now, how can we maximize the benefits of the regulation that entitles shareholders to send written questions to the company before annual general meeting in order to facilitate effective shareholders' engagement?
As I mentioned earlier, before this COVID-19, it was things were not coordinated. So this is a opportunity for SEC and maybe even the CAC to put some of these measures and make it mandatory for the public companies to do so. But now there's nothing that mandates them to either give them information or to put certain things on their website. So going forward, once this is done, and maybe they should also inform everybody of what the shareholders have said before the annual general meeting. So a lot of regulation needs to be put in place.
Like asking them to write their questions before the annual general meeting. Are shareholders really doing that?
No, they're not.
They are not doing it. What can we do to make shareholders do more of that?
I think we need to make everybody know that their vote counts and also their voice counts.
Okay.
Maybe some sort of sensitization by everybody involved. SEC, CAC, even ICSAN. So like, if you have a vote, one share in one company, you have the right to question anything about the company.
Oh, irrespective of the number of shares.
Irrespective of the number of irrespective of the number of shares. Of course, the larger the share, the larger the voice.
Okay, the larger the share, the larger the voice. Yeah. Now let's go back to the Code of Corporate Governance. The code recommends that dealings of the company with shareholders associations, I mentioned shareholders associations the other time, are always transparent and in the best interest of the company. How can the relationship be done transparently by the company?
That's a difficult one.
Dealing with shareholders associations now.
That's a difficult one.
Can we be transparent with it?
Because the company, it's like every day, the board and management of the company, they're there every day.
Yeah. Yes.
The shareholders only come once in a while, likewise the shareholders association. That is the dilemma of corporate governance. How do you monitor somebody that is there every day and you just come once in a while? As I keep on saying, a lot of work has to be done. And we have to know we have a voice. And also even the shareholders association, if you are not careful, it will be used by the company against the shareholders. How are you sure what they're saying? Are they actually representing the shareholders? So that's another issue.
You actually mentioned that in other claims at the beginning that shareholders engagement was more than what we do in Nigeria. What are they really doing in the other claims that we are not doing? How can we benefit or leverage on what they are doing?
There's a lot of regulation somewhere like in America.
Okay.
You know, a lot of regulation that involves monitoring, you know. Also, there's a lot of whistleblowing information. There's a lot of things like, for instance, in America, I know there are all sorts of lobbyists. They lobby, there are people that all they do every day is actually just look at annual reports. Why is this company going down? How much is the director earning? Why is he living such a lifestyle?
Good.
We don't have so many things like that here.
Can't we do it?
We can do it, but it takes somebody to start it, I suppose.
Okay. Under the code, the board is enjoined to encourage institutional investors to monitor its conformance with the code. Do you think this is another mechanism for accountability?
The institutional
Investors.
Yes, the institutional investor, as I told you, somebody like ARM or Stanbic IBTC, they have a lot of financial experts.
Sure.
And they know what figures are and what they are, and they probably know the market. So they're in a position to go and meet the board and say, okay, what happened to this fixed asset? Why were these cars not depreciated? Why is your director being paid too much? They're in a better position than your average retail investor.
I still have to go back to this issue of institutional investors a little bit, because I want the audience to be educated on the issue of institutional investors and the retail investors. And the question I need to ask here is that, why is the responsibility for monitoring compliance limited to institutional investors? You know, they are in most cases less than 10% of the shareholders, and thereby excluding the 90% of the retail investors from doing the monitoring.
I think the retail investor, everybody that has a share in a company, must actually get an annual report and ask questions and actually say, why is my dividend so low? For instance, we have some companies that have been paying 10 kobo for the past 5 years. Actually ask questions and ask on the website, and even gather people, like-minded people, and make some noise. Okay. That will make the company more responsible.
So in a way,
and it's something that can be done.
Okay, in a way, the retail investors are now monitoring through that means.
Yes, you can do that through that means.
Can the retail investor ask questions after the annual general meeting?
You can always ask questions.
Anytime?
Anytime.
That's wonderful.
But the annual general meeting is a platform where you can ask questions, especially when it comes to any other business.
Okay.
So you can actually get up and pose your question. And by the time you pose your question in the AGM, other people might identify and latch on. That is how you begin to get shareholder activism.
Okay, wonderful. So shareholders out there, they know what to do in order to be engaging with their companies. Now, I want to come back to your institute. You are a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria. Does the institute have any training module that, you know, teaches shareholders engagement? Yeah. If yes, to what extent and what's the scope of this training?
ICSAN, as we know, is a broad qualification.
Okay.
Once you do the ICSAN certification, you are able to manage a company, deal with the finances, deal with the human relations, deal with meetings, and you have aspects of corporate law. The module is corporate governance.
Sure.
So it's a corporate governance module that teaches you about meetings and how to handle stakeholder engagement.
Stakeholder engagement, shareholders
engagement, and everything.
Okay. Now, what advice does ICSAN, your institute, have for corporations on how to ensure effective shareholders engagement?
ICSAN has a lot of training programs which they could key into, and you don't have to be a member of ICSAN to join the training programs. Also, we have ability to even fashion a training program for you, because we have a lot of experience with stakeholder engagement, and we can reach out to other professional organizations. I think we have an affiliation with Deloitte.
Okay.
DS, the company secretarial arm, as well as even if you write in, we can advise you how to go about it.
That's beautiful. Your final word of advice to shareholders out there on how to be involved in shareholders engagement.
I think as a first step, we should all actually look at our company's website and see that they actually have the information. If they don't have their information, we should ask why. And if we're not satisfied with the way the company is growing in the stock market, we all have the opportunity to ask why and make some noise, especially on social media.
Thank you very much, Mrs. AJIBIKE OSHODI. This is where we'll wrap it up today and draw the curtain on today's episode. Mrs. AJIBIKE OSHODI, FCIS, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me again.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts on shareholders' engagement.
Thank
you for staying with us on the program. We ask you to join us again next week, same station, same time. I remain your anchorman, Tunde Odeyemi. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Corporate Governance Platform, a program from the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, is now at your doorstep.
By the way, what is corporate governance and what are its key pillars?
Will there be any conflict of interest if our person combines the roles of our chairman and a chief executive officer in a corporate organization?
What can Nigeria do to gain international recognition in the context of the application of corporate governance?
These and many more questions will be answered on
Corporate Governance Platform, a program designed to inform and educate our numerous viewers on the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities.
Join the Corporate Governance Platform crew every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. on MITV, your talent station via DSTV 255.